It's May in the Midwest, and we're starting to see the farmers out in the field planting their corn. At the Western Illinois Museum, we have a number of agricultural artifacts that tell the story of planting corn in Mcdonagh County for nearly 200 years. But first, don't hold it against me, but I'm a city girl. But I have to say, after learning the stories of the longtime family farmers in this area, I really do like rural Illinois. So what was it like to plant corn in Mcdonagh County in the 1800s? Well, you would have probably planted by hand until about 1850, when maybe you would have been able to purchase one of these hand corn planters. They were often known as the chunk machine because of the sound it made when you released the seeds, or a corn jabber, and that was because it had a metal-like bill that you stuck in the ground to release the seeds. So how exactly did this work? Well, let's take a closer look. You would have started by putting your seeds in a bin here. And you'll notice on the inside, there is a metal shaft that releases that seed all the way down into that bill. That's what you would have stuck in the ground. And then you would release it by pulling the handles together, and the corn would drop into the ground. I'm sitting in front of George Brown's corn planter, which is the next important invention of how corn was grown. George was born in upstate New York in 1815, and at the age of 14, he was orphaned. He was sent to live with his older brother, who was a carpenter. In 1834, he marries Maria Turpening, and they decide to move to Warren County to try their hand at farming. Because he's so good with wood, he's often tinkering with people's equipment and fixing it, and even building houses. This is a really interesting piece of equipment, so let's take a look at some of the details. So first, how does this thing work? Well, it's a two-person operation. The person driving the horses is going to sit here on this very comfortable-looking seat. A young boy typically would have sat here in this seat, operating the levers here to release the corn. It has the capability of doing two functions at once. It uses these metal shoes to cut the soil. The seeds are in these bins here and released at the base of those metal shoes, and the wide wheels covered over, combining the operation to plant the corn. One can imagine that after George Brown farms for a number of years, he's trying to find ways to increase his yield. And he draws upon his carpentry skills to create this unique machine. Some of the details are pretty basic, but you see him working through how it's going to work. For example, this metal shoe is nothing but two pieces of metal held together by a piece of wood, but it allows for that seed to fall from that seed bin above into the ground without a complicated manufacturing process. I think the wheels on this planter are also quite unique. They kind of look like barrels that would have probably been commonly used at the time. Can you imagine George Brown seeing barrels being moved by rolling them on their sides and thinking that they would make really good wheels for his planter? It would have been easy for him to find a cooper or a barrel maker to craft these wheels for him with metal bands that hold together these strips of wood. Another detail that I think is interesting are these metal scrapers that are used to take off built-up mud that collect on the wheels. They're activated by a pedal that you can reach when you're sitting on the bench seat. You can see George Brown again using what he has available to him. He's taking just a simple twig and using a bent wire to create a handle for the seed bin. This planter was driven by a team of horses planting 2 rows of corn at once. With a hand planter, you can do 1 to 4 acres. With George Brown's planter, you could do 10 acres a day. In 1853, George Brown receives a patent for his planter. He produces 12 of them that year. At first, farmers are a little skeptical about the planter's ability to drop the seed at the proper depth or to space it for the best yield. But by 1856, he's able to increase production to 1,000 machines. Soon competitors arrive from Quincy all the way over to Galva, but since he holds the patent, he sues them successfully. It's not till 1870 that Dear Mansur comes up with a patentable improvement that Brown has a true competitor. By 1880, he builds a company that's valued over $300,000 with plants up in Galesburg. He even is mayor of Galesburg for 1 year. He continues to run the company until 1893, 3 years before his death in 1895. This brown corn planter was donated to the Western Illinois Museum in 1982 by the Burr family. Javis N. Burr came to Illinois in the 1850s to farm. His son Dennis remembers riding in the small jump seat and having to work the levers to drop the corn seed into the ground. He recounted that they would first mark the field in one direction for the proper spacing and then go back, and every time the mark was hit, he'd flip the levers to release the seed to create a checkerboard planting. Thank you for joining me on this brief tour of some of our artifacts from the agricultural collection. Don't they tell the story of innovation and creativity, taking a skill and repurposing it into something to solve a problem? They also speak about the long-time family farm that are the roots of our community's history. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.